Hey guys, welcome back to another Vanguard video. Today we're here talking about the results for WGP Tokyo Season 2. They're right here at the bottom of the website, right here. We have Ultimate Cup Championship, which is actually team format, which we'll also look at as well. Because it's a really interesting format where basically you only had a day and a half to test the new set, and then the WGP was literally right then and there. So the only time we really had this happen, at least last year, was around when Valsagra came out, and then, Valsagra went to just dominate things afterwards. So I think a lot of people will look at the results for this WGP and say it's very similar. And of course, as usual, we are on the Vanguard Paradox website. If you don't know what it is, it's your one-stop shop for a bunch of JP and English Decklogs. Fuzzy does this for free. Usually my ad blocker will be off, but because I'm recording, it's on right now, so sorry about that, Fuzzy. But if you do want to check out this website, of course, I'll link it down below. For example, if you want to find a Decklog, let's say you wanted to see what the new, let's say, Buddy Fight decks look like, you can go here, just type like Jackknife, ignore that Castile was there. Click here, and then of course JP Decklogs will be on the side as well as the player name and the rank. You want to see rank 1 for Kirin Cup, and an image will pop up or the actual JP Decklog link. So that's basically how to use the site. There's a bunch of great articles, other stuff as well on the Vanguard Paradox website. So just a really great resource. I'm sure if you're a competitive player, you already know about this, but I just want to let people out there who don't already know about it. So first off, we have the WGP. Here is the pie chart right here. I'll put the basically player participation usage rates, which the JP Twitter did put out as well. And the biggest thing to note is that basically Lianorn barely converted. Youthberk actually converted decently well into top cut. As you see, let me just hover on the pie chart right here. The beautiful pie chart that Fuzzy has made. So obviously Prison was the most used here. Oops, I just hit something. You have Youthberk here at 5, Minerva at 4. Not too surprising. Surprisingly, Weisruger is like nowhere here at all. Bob is still here, of course. Virgilia is still here. And a lot of random road decks came here. Fern was actually first place in Swiss before the top cut, but unfortunately they did bubble out. As you can see, they are 9th place here. But, just looking at the pie chart itself, surprisingly, Prison, was going to be good. I think just in terms of people who already knew how to use Prison before and getting new support, it's kind of a little bit more of a comfort pick. I was surprised by how much Youthberk is here because really the only new change is the grade 2 that has to call to an open. There was a little bit of a misplay where someone called over the same rear, but the grade 2 is really strong. Gives you the supplement free early game. Again, I'm using supplement again, and you have Soul Blast for easy power. So Youthberk, on top of Nebula Knight, a lot of orders, does have a lot of really easy ditch fodder and a lot of really early game. So I think that's why Youthberk and Prison came out on top. Lianorn had a lot of high usage rate, but only 1 converted, which is kind of crazy. This is just one event, and it's still very early meta, so it's hard to say. But of course, Prison was a very big safe pick. These 3 decks are basically super dominant in English right now until we see set 11. And, Heart Luru is just very consistent deck, and Minerva is super strong. Came up on stream a lot of times. You have Cocoa, Dissection, very good, easy early game. And I was surprised how low Heart Luru is, and as well as, Virgilla, because I think Virgilla was really, really hyped in English. I think it's probably because of the matchup into Prison, because they can grab your soul, especially if, you'll usually take first as Virgilla, probably against Prison, because, you don't want them to have first and, have the free security upgrade into Seraph. But yeah, it's really cool to see some road deck lists here. Odium actually got 4th, and Chris Rain did get 3rd. You can actually see the official toppings right here, as well as the Decklogs if you want to check out any of them. Odium getting 4th was also pretty surprising because the deck hasn't really gotten anything new except for that one really good card. I forgot which set it was, but basically just another Anachronist Dragon on top of the many Anachronist Dragons that you have. Chris Rain getting 3rd is also pretty surprising as well, and it was really great to see Jackknife Ava. I have Muchika randomly in here, and the Fern Goat, unfortunately, didn't make top 8, but he was undefeated at some point in Swiss, ranking 1, which is pretty crazy. So kind of looking at just these results alone, at least just for singles, again, this is basically an event where people had very little time to playtest, so the meta is really unsolved. And I haven't personally done any playtesting against Prison or with any of the basically set 11 decks, because I haven't really had time besides, proxy playtesting Jiva. But in terms of, looking at these results, obviously Prison is very strong. I think people who don't know the Prison matchup, or for people who just lose die roll and Prison stabilizes with Muna, is really strong. Also, shout out to the person who mentioned the Prison list, because a lot of Prison lists were running the old Galactica, because you do want that initial soul charge for Muna. My computer's taking a while to load it. Oh my gosh, they were playing Orifice starter. But yeah, you have the usual stuff. You have this, which is your basically PG for grade 2s or less. Of course, you have 4 Munas, 4 security upgraders, the usual. Of course, your Seraphs, usually at the usual 3 ratio. Shroud and Shadow is also a really cool tech, I think. You're probably running maybe 4 Orbital Twin Cast. I don't remember what Regulus they were running before, but this is really cool. They also got the one of Boba Mine as well. So very good usual stuff, and of course the really great grade 2 as well, and your usual corner citrus, 2 prison cards from drop. So this list is pretty, nothing crazy honestly, and if you did watch the final match, they did kind of sack a little bit. They also took second from Minerva as well. So yeah, and the Minerva list looks pretty normal to like what we're used to seeing in JP in English. Your usual like Rebellina, the usual 4 of everything. They also got the Ace Unit Nebula Knight order, so obviously that's a really big difference. We do have Ace Unit in English, but no Nebula Knight order, which we won't get until February, which is the end of the BCS season. Yeah, these cards are super strong, you know, 4 Coca. No dissection is kind of weird actually, but I guess because of, you know, your because of the Nebula Knight order, it's not too big of a deal. And of course, you also have Angelica to Soul Charge. So I think this is just a preference list because they're running the Biscotti over, you know, the usual dissection slots. That is the usual list that you will see in English now, especially because, you know, we don't have the Nebula Knight order. So you have 4 deck slots basically to work with. And as for the Chris Rain list, I believe it was also pretty straightforward as well. You probably high 5, make a board, the usual stuff. My computer just cannot load these lists at all. But you see, we got the Ace Unit, we got the new grade 2. We got Yuika, Can't Look Into Your Eye, Akamine-san. The one of Resius, which is really cool for the +10. For those who don't know, on place you get something +10 because for the new Chris Rain, we actually found out Kyrus was looking at the rulings that because you don't have to bounce all of your rears, you can actually leave the rear that was boosting Chris Rain, and that will count towards the power for Divine Skill. So for example, if you buff Vanguard or the booster boosting Chris Rain, for example, you have a 23 boost onto Chris Rain. I don't know, let's say Chris Rain is like, I don't know, 28, whatever number. Basically, when you call that rear, it will count the boosted number because it's still mid battle. So that is a really big upgrade to Chris Rain's Divine Skill, which I think is really underestimated. Of course, you know, you got your Restander, yeah, your forefront Chet, the usual stuff. So yeah, really, really cool deck list. And of course, the usual, you know, lyrical slop. Sorry to say that, you know, the usual generics, you know, your 4 high 5s, the usual fire Regulus, like all the good stuff. Also, Highlander PG is hilarious as well. So yeah, pretty normal stuff, I would say. For Odium, and I'm sure the other lists are also pretty straightforward. But again, you can go through all these yourselves. I'm just kind of like yapping about these for fun. In terms of Odium, nothing too crazy. I'm surprised Ravos is here, honestly, but like this list looks solid. This is the new card. I completely forgot what it does, but you know, Countercharge 1 is really strong. And of course, Odium, if you know what you're doing and you are, you know, winning those dice rolls, you are going to just like steamroll the heck out of your opponent on Divine Skill turns. So really cool list, honestly. Nothing too crazy. Don't remember exactly what this card does, but I think it's from, oh, it's from DZ-BT11. Okay. Yeah, it's probably like a card of the day. Get the extra shield. That's probably why it's in here. Yeah, just looking at the WGP results, we got a lot of road decks. I think these definitely are the top decks. I was not expecting Youthberk to have as high as conversion as it did because I was expecting it to fall off like Lianorn in terms of conversion, but I'm surprised it's up here. But Youth is a pretty simple, straightforward brute force deck. You get massive numbers, especially once you win die roll and you get that exist set up. So not really too surprised. The Youthberk list is pretty straightforward. Actually, there was no Youthberk in top 8. That's kind of crazy. So I guess that says something about Youthberk right there. Because I honestly don't think too highly of the deck, but this is probably what it will look like in English. Nebula Knight order can probably be some more Caterpile stuff. You know, the usual. You could probably put in dissections, honestly, in here too. But your soul is kind of tight. Of course, you have the Maple. You know, the Soul Boss won't call it out. You know, +5 power, +5 shield, really nice 10k shield. Of course, the 4 Surgaion. You got the Ace Unit here to make a board. Keter Cat's also really nice. Also 20k shield, which is really strong. And of course, you have Carino to deck in, shove your resist to soul, or add them to hand. And of course, your Nebula Knight order and Twin Cast for extra defense. So yeah, also they're running 4 draws, which is really interesting. And a lot of people are running the restand effect heals for the extra 15k shield because there are a lot of things that are restanding, you know, Heart Lure, Minerva. Also same for Prison as well if they restand with quarter citrus. So yeah, that is pretty much it to talk about. I could probably make a whole 1 hour long video yapping, going through all these lists, but that will just make this video way too long. So that is pretty much it for Ultimate Cup. I do also want to talk about the card of the days that we did get, or not card of the days, the stream reveals basically that we got for Sagitta as well as Clarissa. First, I want to talk about the Ultimate Cup. So this is actually team format, and not surprisingly, this is more what you expect from the pie chart. There are a lot of Virgilia, a lot of Minerva, a lot of Lianorn, and a lot of Youthberk, which is surprising. Less Prison here in the team format, but as you can see here, you know, when we look, you see a lot of blue, a lot of blue. Leo Draconis here is pretty surprising as well, Youthberk, and again, a lot of Lianorn, because it just seems like the high roll deck that you can slap into any team deck. Also, Jejeweled in here, sneaking its way as well. So, yeah, the first place theme was actually Minerva, Virgilia, and Heart Lure, so basically all the meta decks, not surprising. And, you know, when you look at this pie chart, it's very different from the single pie chart that we got right here for the WGP singles. But, you know, this is singles versus teams, very different. And I don't believe Ultimate Cup does diversity cut, but I could be wrong. I'm not 100% sure on that. But yeah, for those who don't know what diversity cut, it's basically just favoring people in Swiss that have different ride lines from other people. But I don't believe Vanguard Cup, Ultimate Cup does that. But again, I could be wrong. So yeah, really interesting thing to look at in terms of results. If you do want to check it out, look on the Vanguard Paradox. And I'm just going to get to some like general news after basically yapping for like 10 minutes. All right, so we have DZ set 12. I made a community post about this, but for those who don't see those, because who uses YouTube community posts, we have an official release date. It is February 27th for Chasm of Lost Souls right here. And we got reveals of the Youthquake promo, so thank goodness we are finally getting this in English. It is coming really, really late though. This is basically going to be right before Worlds-ish. Not right before Worlds, but you'll still have a few months. But it's really weird because it will impact some BCSs, but for basically me, it's like not really doing much, and for most of the BCS season. So we do have the Nebula Knight order. That is the biggest thing. Salsira is really cool as well. We're finally getting that in English. Blazing Warcry, finally. Reprints for Mythiarch Habitat. Sergon's really nice. Mythiarch Habitat was pretty cheap, but Sergon's really nice. Knight of Starry Sky 0 is pretty big as well, stopping autos. Big buff for Alfred, because that deck was basically unplayable in English because we didn't have Alfred for what feels like months now. I mean, it has been months now, but I was going to say a year. But yeah, and Adventure Studies Academic Areas as well. That is a promo for, what's it called, Storaja for the Youthquake as well. So really nice to see those cards get upgrades, and finally to get Blazing Warcry and Nebula Knight order in English. And they will be box toppers. There were pre-orders on 50 cards for pretty cheap. I believe he did raise the prices for the popular ones, but I'm guessing it'll probably be like Sergon, where it will land around 20-ish USD, probably a little bit higher. Sergon did have the tournament booster promo pack for when you bought packs, you got extra promos, so I hope they do that as well for this. But again, you know, right now these are just, you know, promos included in the box, so they're box toppers, not part of the tourney boost promo like we had for Sergon before. And of course, you know, the Skyride units, all the English translations that we did a video on when we got that reveal for the JP live stream, so that's pretty cool. And then now they basically yap about the lyrical cards. Let me catch my breath for a second. Alright, so last thing I want to mention is Amon's full skill reveal. He doesn't get a crit, but he does get drive +1. He forces his opponent to discard, and for each card in Soul, your front row rears get +1. You know, this isn't even counting Brainwash Swirler or Doreen, which is going to become massive once you soul charge a bunch of cards. And it's not hard as well. You know, we'll probably get a new Rideline for Amon, I'm guessing, if he is his own encounter in a set, likely in DZ-12 or later, but, you know, we don't know for now. This is your just effects on the Skyride. And there's also a Vanguard secondary effect when your DI rearguard is placed. You choose a card from drop, put into Soul, so basically being able to 2-box your drop as well. And you're going to soul charge your entire deck, so that's really, really nice. And of course, you know, you have generics like Querga and whatnot to help with that, so yeah. Alright, now to go through the Clarissa and Sagitta support. Honestly, they are really good cards, but I don't really think they're solving a lot of the problems of the decks. But do let me know if you are mains for these decks, because they do read really, really good. This is one of definitely the stronger ones. Actually, this is just a rare, but you have Earnescorrect follower Filne, so act on Rearguard Circle. If you have a Great 3 Greater Vanguard with Clarissa and its card name, cost, retire this unit, perform one of the following. You choose a normal unit with Earnescorrect and its card name from your drop, call to Rearguard Circle, or choose an aim to be strongest idol from your drop, put into your hand. The promo basically does this, so I guess it's not too good of a card, but, you know, another name's Earnescorrect, you know, just another one added to the list. This card reads really, really, really insane. We have Earnescorrect follower Kiaro, so auto when discarded from hand during your turn. If you have Vanguard with Clarissa and its card name, cost energy boss 3 and draw 1. Then auto and drop at the end of your turn. If you have a Great 3 Greater Vanguard with Clarissa and its card name and your Vanguard's attack hit this turn, you cost bind this card, choose your rears, return it to hand. So kind of hurts that it does have to hit, because when you go first, you're not able to play aim to be the strongest idol because your opponent does have to be on grade 3. So unfortunately, Clarissa didn't get a way to get around that, or, you know, have some skill that says, oh, you still technically played the order this turn, unfortunately. But this is still pretty good. You know, you have easy right deck ditch fodder. Ortimo does use energy, but it's not the biggest issue in the world. I guess it will kind of be more oriented on whether you went first or second, because Ortimo is basically the better version of this. That, you know, can be a booster and can also find you pieces. But, you know, this effect just, you know, because once you hit grade 3, you're basically brawlers. Like, you are going to be hitting something unless they guard every swing, but your Van will be massive. So, you know, having that bounce for rear every turn is really, really nice, especially so you can grab Earnescorrect names specifically. And basically, the cost for bind is, it's not even worded, so you can't use multiple of them actually. So you could actually, you know, put them all on standby if you had a bunch in drop. And again, being able to just farm early hand whenever discarded during your turn is really, really nice. Alright, next up is Earnescorrect follower Tuadine. So auto and drop, when your grade 3 good or Vanguard with Clarissa and his card in misplaced. If you do not have a unit with the same name as this card, you may call this a Vanguard circle. If you call it, you Soul Blast 1, and the next cost of a card with Earnescorrect in his card name you pay is reduced by Counter Blast 1. So you basically get to save a CB and it's a Maple. So again, oh man, more grade 1 Maple clones, more grade 2 Maple clones. Thanks Bushy, it's happening. And then auto Vanguard circle, when this unit either attacks or boosts, you may have this unit get plus 2k, so 10k booster for nice numbers. If you did at the end of the battle, retire this unit. This is nice because you can grab it back from drop through other effects. So really good card, honestly. More, CB reduction in your deck, so, you don't feel too bad about paying the cost for your other CB cards, especially for your order and whatnot. But yeah, not exactly what Earnescorrect needed. I think they definitely needed a way to have their order, or at least supplement their order being played, quote unquote, when they go first, because it is locked. So these are really, really good cards, especially this one. This card just is insane for the deck. But, it's not really solving any of the problems that Earnescorrect really needed to have solved. So yeah, at least they have the dress up Shenry, but like you can't play it because you need Earnescorrect names in Clarissa. It's very locked names for their archetypes. So unfortunately, the Clarissa fans, tell me how you feel about this. But honestly, it's kind of disappointing. Doesn't really do anything to really fix the deck. They are really strong cards, don't get me wrong, but not really changing much for the deck. Next up, we have Sagitta, which is the absolute 0/4 attack deck, known as Hanali, basically. You have Heart Dancing in the Light Judge Maiden Lucile, so act and drop. If you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard with absolute 0, you cost bind this card, and you perform one of the following. So basically, it's ditch fodder early, because of course you'll want to ditch it for the Bride deck to get it into drop. You get, if it is the 4th battle of that turn, all of your Vanguard's continuous abilities are nullified until end of turn. So basically, you get to bypass the pitch for the extra attacks where you have to pitch to pay the cost when it swings. And then, once it goes back to your opponent's turn, they'll have to pay that cost. So basically, getting to bypass your own effect that restricts you as well, by the way. Because there was some synergy where you did have to pitch. So basically on turns where you don't want to pitch and extend your combo and call more, so basically outside of Persona usually, you will basically use that effect. Then the secondary one is choose one of your units with either absolute 0 or Judge Maiden in its card name, and the next cost of unit's ability you pay that would discard your card from your hand is reduced by 1. So basically you just get to do 1 less ditch cost. So this card is just free ditch fodder. And, it's just bind, so you don't even really need to use any energy, Soul Blast, or Counter Blast, which is really good. And there is actually a lyrical card that can technically reset this. It's kind of like Bell, but a little bit harder because you have to spend a soul. So technically you could, reset your bind zone in lyrical. But yeah, this card is just really good. You get to basically save yourself hand during your turn. And that is just really good for a deck that is doing triple drive and has rears that kill themselves to retire draw 1. Alright, now we have long-awaited Letter Judge Maiden Pryuk. So auto when this unit is placed on Vanguard circle. If you have Vanguard with absolute 0 in its card name, you cost Soul Blast 1. You search your deck for a card, discard it, shuffle your deck. So free ditch fodder. Sorry, not free ditch fodder. Free, selective mill out of deck, which is pretty crazy. You can deck thin your, Twin Cast or whatever heck else. If you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard, this card gets power plus 5. So, plus 5 is plus 5. But, being able to selectively, burial anything out of your deck is crazy. Then auto, when retired from Vanguard circle, your other unit with Judge Maiden its card name. Basically, when overcalled, you put this card into Soul, draw 1. If you have grade 3 or greater Vanguard with absolute 0, you cost Soul plus 1. All your front units get plus 5. And this should stack with the grade 1. I believe it's the Rideline, but I might be thinking of another rare. That does give plus 5 to your front row. So, you'll basically have double Persona Ride in absolute 0, which is pretty nice. And again, more selective mill to grab your pieces back is always good. Or you can even mill out orders, right? This doesn't say, any card. Wow, that's crazy. Of course, you could also mill out Fire Regulus, whatever the heck else you want out of your deck to set up. So honestly, pretty solid card. I'm surprised this is a triple rare. This means more like a double rare, but of course you get free draw, selective mill, plus 5, and plus 5 the front row as well. So, honestly, pretty good card for Sagitta. Is this really going to make it good? Hard to say. Your numbers should be a lot better. But I don't know. There are a lot of attacks that are doing more than 4 attacks, so they usually will have to pay their taxes for those attacks. So maybe I could see a world where absolute 0 is maybe tier 2, tier 3-ish, but kind of hard to say at this point without really knowing too much about the deck. Besides the general gist, it's still doing, I think, max 5 attacks. I could be wrong, maybe 4. I know with the grade 3, you could also call the grade 1 used in Highlander that does Soul Blast 1 to call itself. But yeah, this is just a really good card all around, like another +5, and you know, this is also not, they basically didn't word this or make it so it has to bind itself or whatever, and then, you know, not have you know, if this card used the ability this turn, you can't use it again. So you could stack this, which is really nice as well, because basically the point is to have this in front row, have it get overcalled, and, you know, buff up your front row. And then next Tuesday we have the new Rideline for Blaz Folia, which is pretty cool. So that is pretty much it in terms of, you know, just yapping about things and going over results. I think for WGP Tokyo, it was definitely a meta where people basically had no clue what to bring. So I think a lot of Prison and Youth are here because people had already played these decks. It's kind of like their comfort pick. Of course, you have the meta picks and then all the rogue picks right here. So pretty interesting to look at results and kind of yap for a bit. I don't know how, but this video became 20 minutes. So yeah, I hope you grabbed popcorn and snacks. Probably should have warned that at the beginning. Thank you guys so much for 700 subscribers. I'm working on some other videos that are kind of more long form and scripted, because this really, I'm just like yapping over a screen, which is a lot easier than the usual editing. So kind of doing a different format because I wanted to have extra things to talk about besides just the reveals for just Sagitta and other things, because I think this is a really interesting WGP again, where people didn't really know what to bring and people just brought either their comfort pick or whatever they just felt like just throwing out there to try out. And this was basically the result. Again, a lot of Prison and Top Cut, so I think people will complain about that, but you know, we'll see the meta kind of settle in the next few months for JP and then see how that will translate over to English. Probably about the same. I'm still again surprised more Lianorn didn't convert, that more Youth than Lianorn did. Like maybe the Lianorns just got sacked, or maybe they just didn't find their pieces or something. So we'll see in the coming months how the meta changes and if the pie chart really does continues to remain to look like that. Also, again, I guess people really like gave up on Vice Ruger. Like Vice Ruger just disappeared off the pie chart. I have no clue where he went. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you again in another Vanguard video, hopefully.